Hi, Sherman. Thank you so
Hi.
much. Thanks for joining us today. This is another episode of A Studio of One's Own, which
Mm,
is actually a weekly online dialogue session where we reach out to artists from various parts of
mm,
the world, and also just to catch up with them on their changing creative routine now that we're in the midst of a global pandemic. So Sherman Ong is a filmmaker, photographer, and visual artist, and his practice centers around the human condition and our relationships with others within the larger social environment and milieu. So before we begin, I guess I just want to ask you how you've been doing and what do you have any updates for us during this quarantine?
I've actually been quite busy that during the quarantine, because
Mm,
before the quarantine, I was doing some documentation work for the National Gallery. And
okay.
then because of the quarantine, because the National Gallery had public programs, so I was doing the documentation. And then once the quarantine started, the public programs have to be shifted to online videos.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so what I've been doing is that I was actually and the various artists, like for example the musicians from
Mm,
SSO, and then some of the musicians they were playing at home, and then they send me their files, then I put them together, and then
wow.
after that it's streamed as a kind of a film under the National Gallery's program. It's called Resonates with.
Ah, I
Yeah,
see.
yeah.
So
So I was
you had
actually
the
fairly busy, but also I think the quarantine period is a for me is a I wasn't bored actually. I was kind of like that's why I sent the Tarkovsky clip. I think like I hear like a lot of people were so bored at home, and then I
yeah.
think the Tarkovsky clip is actually very relevant. But
Mm,
that clip talks about um, how we have to be at peace with solitude. You know,
definitely.
you're not lonely, but you're in solitude. You know, like
Yeah.
yeah, and then you don't have to be lonely. And then I think like for the some people, I mean, not only the young, but I think some of the old people also they feel bored. Is that the is this? I think the quarantine allows me to also start to reflect on many things.
Yes.
Yeah, and then one of the things that I begin to look at is also uh, the end point of art making. You know,
Wow.
like
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, what's this endeavor of art making? I mean, in light of the ST article about
Yes.
non-essential stuff, right? I mean, like,
Yes.
yeah. So I think like to be an artist and to be a it's actually a choice, you know. Yeah, and if you take that choice, it's a kind of I think for artists when they choose to be an artist, an individual who chooses to be an artist, he takes on like almost like a pilgrimage, like what a
Right.
monk, you know, like a
Right.
monk. If
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
decide to, if you decide to leave the material world, if you decide to leave the rat race, and then you
Mm-hmm.
decide to become a monk, then you are actually putting your entire being into a certain, like almost a route, you know, going towards and I think being an artist is like that. So if you choose to be an artist, I think there is no if you are really settled to in that direction, I think you wouldn't be perturbed with this kind of little articles, you know.
Right.
That should be
Yeah.
just like water on a duck's back,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
because because I think the path of art making and the path of moving towards it's actually it's about a path of actually about path of self-discovery.
Mm.
Yeah, and for me, I think, and we can see most of my work actually, the material, the core essence of the work actually comes a lot from my own personal background. Yeah, and the experience.
Yeah.
So I think art making is like it's almost like a for me, I look at it like almost like a pilgrimage. Because
Yeah.
when you as you move, you go on, you begin to it's actually through art making then I understand a lot more about life, about
Right.
human, about people. And and then also it's almost like you reach a state of detachment. Yeah, I don't know whether I don't.
Enlightenment.
Yeah, but I don't know whether eventually it may reach that kind of state
Mm.
that I mean even
Mm.
the religious people they go. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Actually, I used to think, I mean, when I first saw the article and I saw that people got angry, I thought that it was because, artists, like being an artist as a career is just like inherently indulgent because you don't make the choice for, to make money, obviously.
Mm,
Like it's like what you said, it's kind of like it's a decision that you choose to
mm,
put yourself through.
yeah.
And so like maybe this attack on the career becomes like an attack on the self, and that's why a lot of people were quite upset by that label of being non-essential.
Yeah, but these are things that you see, these are things that are beyond the control of the individual, right?
Yeah,
You know, the
yeah,
article appears, and then if you
yeah.
as an individual, you cannot control the article, but
Mm-hmm.
you, the individual artist, what you can control is that you can control your own emotions.
Yes.
You can control,
Yes.
that is the only thing that you can control. And you can control that is you can control how you react towards the article.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you
Okay.
want to be angry, and of course then it will affect you, then you'll be angry. Like.
Yeah.
If you just move on and say you just move on and you won't be affected by the article anyway.
Right. But
Yeah.
I mean, it does make you think a lot about like the artist's role in a crisis, in times of crisis, because
Mm.
I mean, it's easy to say like, oh, art is just like a very class specific luxury, but if you
Mm.
think about the time, like I feel like there's also some sort of social responsibility as artists during crisis. Would you
Yeah.
say?
Um, Actually, the larger picture is that, and I think I'm not going back to the survey. I think
Yeah.
the survey, the definition, and um, if you talk about art in a larger context,
Yeah.
everything like in quarantine, then you look at the YouTube, you look at the Netflix and all that. If you are saying that they are non-essential, then what if you erase everything? There's no YouTube, no
Mm,
graphic design, there is no music, no TV, because those are all artistry,
right.
those are all art making.
Right.
Yeah. So I think some people don't realize that it's so art is so prevalent in their lives that, and I think maybe the survey is skewed towards just about artists,
Yeah.
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 So I think the definition also somewhat is, and
Yes,
okay,
for
then
sure.
we shall not talk about that article. There's no point. So what I'm saying is that the back to your question, and your question was what again? Wait.
Oh, it was like where do you see the role of artists, I guess, in a
Ah,
pandemic, in the larger scale of things? Not really about like how much money they're supposed to make or anything, but like
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, during a pandemic, I think during pandemic, the artists have to be like everybody else, to to I guess, uh, yeah. But during the pandemic, I think is you see a kind of kinship that appears online. You see,
Mm. Yeah,
the
yes.
kinship that you experience on a physical space is translated to an online space,
Mm.
and then people are begin to have a lot. And I think that is, but I think that will only be so much lah, because there are certain elements where physical contact is still a lot more, yeah, and
Yeah, for
especially
sure.
for theater, and then you reach a saturation point where you feel that you have, there's too many things online also you can't follow.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and for me, I don't follow so much. I just like switch off, because like for me, I
It's
think
very
it's a,
rapid.
yeah, it's a time also for me, and that's why I didn't feel that the quarantine period was something that is
Right.
so, like difficult.
Mm.
Yeah, partly
Okay.
because I think I was, maybe by nature I was also quite a solitary person,
Mm.
and always that kind of solitude allows me to just think
Think
and
more,
reflect
yeah.
and
Right.
ruminate, and then and 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 sometimes it's actually about not doing anything.
Yeah,
Yeah, you need that kind of space.
definitely.
And I think if you look at some of the larger videos that I've seen around, actually this situation is also like Mother Nature's way of saying that we need to take a break. Like the
Yeah.
earth, yeah, like the earth needs to take a break.
Yes, yes.
It's a way that to put certain things back in order. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I actually see this like whole pandemic as like a global interruption
Yeah.
on just everything men
And then it
social.
makes you, the individual, realize that you are much more interconnected. I think before
Exactly.
that, you don't realize that everybody is doing things for themselves.
Right.
Everybody is doing things for themselves. But then this pandemic actually makes you think that the next time you're going to take plastic or consume things,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there is. I think some people are beginning to realize that there's a larger, uh, this that the being, the individual is a larger component of the cosmos. I mean, it's just connected, and I think that
Yeah.
is, for me, I think that is something that the as an artist, I mean, I guess is that realization. When you yeah, I mean, you come to the realization. But I think for some people, I mean, they'll feel very bored, right? So I think that is
Yeah.
how you um but I think the thing that what we do in during the quarantine period, like,
Mm.
is actually always to reflect on things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
To take
uh,
advantage of like the silence lah. Like I think this
yeah, yes,
quietness is
yeah,
important.
yes,
Yeah. So I mean now that you mentioned something about like a pause and like this
mm,
returning to the earth, and I mean like being more
mm,
aware of the earth, right? I guess like I realized that time now has become so fluid because
mm,
like when all these events start getting cancelled, you realize that there's no way of really like marking time and things like that.
mm,
So how do you make sense of this fluidity, and how, like, as you say, you are able to take advantage of solitude because you've been
mm,
someone like a very solitary person. So how do you take
yeah.
advantage of it?
Actually, I use it as a kind of really to it's it's really to I actually cut myself off from the larger world,
Mm,
and it's quite the feeling was quite interesting for me. Sometimes, like, there was a period, like almost like 1 week, I just don't interact.
right.
Yeah, except for the immediate family members, like, you have to, right, right. Then it's almost like, how do you say, like a silent retreat.
Mm,
Some people, they go for a silent retreat where
yes.
you go and you spend like 7 days or 10 days with you don't say a word.
Right.
Yeah, there's no spoken word and no interaction with your mobile phones and everything. And then the
Mm-hmm.
only dialogue is actually within yourself,
Wow.
and the only conversations is within yourself.
Yes.
And yeah, and but of course, like, for me, I always have the, like, YouTube and all that to look at short things. And and I mean, I've been like binging on some of the YouTube stuff and all that, and you begin to see the um how do you say that the inter actually, I've been looking at certain, what to say, videos by, there's this Indian guru called Sadhguru. So
Oh,
there's this,
okay.
yeah,
So like,
it's
yeah.
yeah it's almost like, what he says is a very common sense. It's so very
Yes.
simple common sense, um, but it's something that you don't realize. But when you listen to it, it's just everything so common sense. Yeah,
Yep.
I think Gwen said, what caught your attention on YouTube? Yeah, actually, this YouTube. Okay, one is like, I have to cook, so I have to go and look for things to cook. I use the YouTube to find ways to do simple cooking, because, like, I'm
Okay.
here, I cook myself, right? And then I also use the YouTube to look at things that I didn't had the time to explore. Yeah,
Mm,
it's almost like going out of your interest and
mm,
begin to explore. But at the same time, I think this period allows me to. I would say that you begin to see that, like, when you say the what is the role of the artist, I think the artist have to forget himself or herself lah.
right, right.
Yeah, the artist has to actually really disappear, and just, because actually for me, the artist's role is very much like a kind of catalyst. It's through the artwork I mean, like some
Mm.
artists is through their painting, some artists is through their music, some artists is through their sculptures and all that.
Yeah.
It's actually a kind of way to prick somebody,
Mm.
to prick
Mm.
the consciousness of an audience or the potential audience,
Yeah.
and and to prick them in a way that means the artwork provokes them, or I mean pricks them, that they will be playing in their mind, and then sometimes they may not find the answer. That's why then certain artworks, when you encounter certain artworks, you may not have, I wouldn't say it's not the knowledge, you may not have the experience or the life
Right.
experience to fully comprehend the artwork.
Mm-hmm.
But then maybe like few months later or 1 year later or 2 years later, you, if you revisit those kind of artwork, then you begin to, you see different layers. And I think those
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
artworks are interesting. I mean, like especially
Yes.
like that's why I mean, like I was highlighting the Tarkovsky's films.
Yeah.
Tarkovsky's films are so dense and they are so layered.
Yeah.
But if you watch it in your 20s, and then you watch it again in your 30s, and you watch it again in your 40s, it will mean different thing to you.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think an artwork that has the ability to
Mm.
allow for this kind of um, absorption, and
Mm.
also to interact with people in the different periods of their life, I think is a very powerful artwork. And I think that's, and you don't get that from any other source except in from the art one. You know, like,
Yeah.
yeah, and the arts is so big. I mean, like, um, actually, yeah. I mean, that's what I think. So
Wow.
art,
Yeah.
art making is so. If you look at the larger picture, what is the essence of art making?
Right.
Yeah, the essence. I mean, art making is not about being rich and famous and selling a lot of artworks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that is the byproduct, and that is the byproduct of the art market.
Yes.
But for the individual artist, for the artist himself,
Yes.
what is it for him? Why do you do, if you want to make money, you might as well go into another line, you know? You go
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
banking, you go into become a lawyer or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
That's
mean,
true. Yeah.
so when you choose to go into art and going into and do art, I mean, like you choose to, I mean, if you choose to give yourself, I mean, like it's almost like you're like a monk, you know, you choose to be into going into a monkhood.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That means your whole being has to be there, no matter what, no
Yes.
matter what people say, no matter what the world says. You have to actually detach yourself from the world, and it is, and of course, like from the outside looking in, they say it's very difficult path. But if you're already, if you have put your entire being in it, if you move that, you know, you put everything of yourself, you go straight, right?
Yeah.
You don't feel any hardship on it. Things will just
That's
fall
true. It
in.
begins in your mind lah. Like once
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
you yourself change that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And because
That's
it's just everything is all controlled here, right?
yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
like I'm
true.
saying that the two things that humans have, memory and imagination. These are
Mm.
the two things that define humans, right? Memory
Mm-hmm.
and imagination. But these are the two things also that shackle humans,
Right.
memory and imagination.
That's really
Memory is
interesting.
the things from the past that will,
Yep.
but this is not from me, it's from the Sadhguru. I'm just telling you. So because like, and also is it like art making, because, and these are the two, because we are so unique in that sense, our memory, our attachment, you know,
Yeah.
and our memory and our attachment is actually the one that will make you sad or make you
Make
happy
you
or what, you
suffer.
know.
Yeah.
And of course your imagination, yeah, it will make you suffer. And then of course is your imagination will also make you suffer, right?
Yeah.
Because you think that, oh, I want to get something like this, I want to reach something like this, and then you are constantly but then the present, you're always thinking about the past and the future. No, imagine you're going to, but actually the
Mm,
present, you're not really being aware of the present. Yeah.
right, right.
So
Wow, yeah.
so this period also makes me watching all this what do you
A
call
lot of soul
videos that
searching.
feeds the soul.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
definitely. That's
and
good, I
and
think.
and yeah, and because as artists you need to realize that what is this purpose of what are you doing,
Right,
right?
definitely. Yeah,
Whether your
yeah,
work is going to contribute in any way to the larger well-being or the
yeah.
larger understanding or of the human condition. I mean,
Mm,
that is always my standpoint when I deal with my films, when I deal with my photography. And for me, I think films allow me the breath,
yeah.
because films you have the audio and the visual component, and that is a very layered and um, so that's why if you watch any of the old masters film, like I mean, I think Tarkovsky's film is the perfect example lah. Yeah, you can actually see that it's just like a painting, because like a painting
Mm,
you cannot, yeah, it's not like even like those museum tour online, right? During the
yes,
pandemic you have so many, but you cannot replicate the experience of standing in front of the painting
for
and
sure.
watching
Yeah.
the painting. That you cannot replicate through this kind of online thing. Yeah,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you speak a lot about these, like, exploring the human condition, and I know you've made a lot of films about like trying to address this. So what can you share a bit about one of the films that you found were your favorite to make, or the process where you enjoyed the most?
uh
And
Actually, I enjoy all my films that I make. But there's
I know
one that you
filmmaking
can
is a
watch
very,
online.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It's a but because okay, for me, because I work in photography and filmmaking, right?
yes,
Somehow I feel that the filmmaking is actually a collaborative effort,
for sure,
whereas
yeah.
photography tends to be more
It's more personal.
yeah, more individual, more
Yeah,
solitary. Yeah.
yes.
So like for me, I vacillate between these two spectrum
Mm,
lah. It's a
mm,
spectrum, what?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the solitary nature, and then when, because film is actually a lot more. Actually, when you move into filmmaking, it's actually more about dealing with egos, dealing with yeah,
Definitely.
managing people,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
managing. Whereas in photography mode, you are actually a lot more in control, and you're
Mm,
actually in dialogue with yourself. Whereas
yes.
in film, you have to like be
You have to
navigate with
manage a
the
lot of
different things and all
people.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So uh there's one, okay, like mm, I give you this. There's one that is online that you
Mm,
can share. This one is the Vitsi one.
mm.
Yeah. So this is part of my, yeah, this is the video. Yeah,
Okay,
it's
thank
online,
you.
and then the public can watch. This is one video out of the series. Then
Yep.
this series is part of my Nusantara series. The Nusantara means the Malay world. I mean the term
Yep.
Nusantara. The Nusantara refers to. I mean the literal meaning is like between the islands. Nusa
Okay.
Antara. Yeah, Nusa is
Uh,
island and Antara is between. So what is between the islands is actually the waterways, and
right.
the waterways are the conduit of trade. And with trade, you bring your values, you bring your discrimination, you bring
Mm,
your biases, and of course you bring your culture, you bring everything. Yeah, and that
definitely.
is why, and I look at in this region. I mean, like you are asking me, what are the definitive things about this region? One of the
Yeah.
definitive thing about the Southeast Asia is actually the monsoon, and which is why I had a series of works on the
Yeah.
monsoon. The monsoon is the markers of human economic activity. You know, the
Okay.
monsoon determines when you start your planting season. The
Right.
monsoon determines when you go out to sea and when you cannot go out to sea. And the monsoon determines when is the tourist season and when is not, when the coasts are closed, like in Bali and in the east coast of Malaysia. When the
Yep.
monsoon starts, then the tourists are not, I mean, normally the tourists don't come because it's like heavy rain and all that. So
Mm-hmm.
actually the monsoon defines the way how we live our lives. Uh, that is in tandem with nature lah. And that is more,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think the only thing is like in Singapore is a bit different. Singapore is the only, I mean, from my experience, I think Singapore is the only way where we try to control nature instead of working with nature,
Yep.
you know?
I agree.
Yeah. So Singapore is a way like try to control nature, but you cannot control nature, right? I
Yeah,
don't
which is
think, yeah.
why this pandemic is so important, because you really just
Yes.
like your eyes are open to, these agents of power that we really cannot
Yes.
control. Yeah.
Yeah. You cannot control, regardless like whether it is made by somebody or whether it's
Mm-hmm.
is artificially made or what. But it has its roots in. I think it has its root in the excesses of human,
Yeah.
of human behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is the byproduct. I mean, all these things are the byproduct of the excesses of human. And I
Mm.
think this quarantine period also forces some people. I mean, some people they will realize and they take a moment to note and there's a reflection about what is
Mm-hmm.
really important for them, what is really
Yeah.
truly important for them. Yeah, whether
Yes.
it's their family, their close ones, or whether it's their career. Is yeah, I think it puts everything on the line. Everything is like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you begin to see. So for me, it's like when you ask me about my work. Actually, my work always deals about this sense of the characters that I create is always they are somehow is always pushed to the edge of the wall. Like they have nowhere
Mm.
to run, and then they have to make
Right.
they have to make hard decisions. Yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes they have to make decisions that are hard, but it's the best decision given the circumstance.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think the pandemic also forces people to do that. It's between
Yes.
your life and the economy. What
Yes.
you want your money or you want your life? Yeah,
That's
and
really true.
countries have to
Yeah.
choose. What it's like
Mm.
Singapore now. Is like you open up early, and of course, like is of course because nobody if they don't want your economy to suffer, then there's repercussions in the sense of
Yep.
the yeah. So there's
Yes.
always this kind of dialectic situation.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes.
mean this dialectic nature is very much like in the larger is embodied in the yin and yang,
Yeah.
the Tao, Yeah.
So do you think that this pandemic was
Hmm.
part of a result of the cosmos? It's here to restore some sort of balance
For
to
me, I
this
think
world.
it is lah. Whether it's man-made or whether it's not, but it is there are larger forces. There are
Yeah.
larger forces at play. Like I said,
Mm.
these are the results of the excesses of human life.
Mm.
Of
Yeah.
our of human actions.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess
So
I have a question
people need
since
to think. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, like you talk a lot about like the human condition and like delving into the human psyche. So I was wondering what this crisis has revealed to you about your community there in KL, or like the human condition
Mm,
responding to this crisis,
mm,
especially since like how Malaysia has handled the situation.
mm.
Yeah,
Actually, I'm like one foot in Malaysia and one foot in Singapore. I'm
Singapore.
actually
Yeah,
connected in
that's
Singapore,
true.
and because I'm in Malaysia, but I'm still doing all my work is in Singapore.
I guess
So
that's why you can
yeah,
see like the
huh?
borders are
Yeah,
so
and
transient. Yeah.
yeah, and the borders are so. And I've always had this one foot here and one foot there. I realized that all my life is like that. It's like culturally also like uh, my ethnicity is like one foot in the Malay world, one foot is in the Chinese world,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
then on the family side,
Yeah.
we are one foot in Malaysia and one foot in Singapore, because like the extended family, they are from Malacca,
Right.
and then they move to Singapore,
Right.
and then they are on both sides, So,
So
so
you're
for
always
me,
having this like
huh?
inner battle, inner
No, it's
dialogue
like
with
we are
yourself.
always this very amphibious situation. Like it's always like,
Yeah.
mm, and I think that is what it is like to be in um, to thrive in an environment like Southeast Asia. I think you cannot
Mm-hmm.
be so cut off. Like you have to be
Yes.
like in the island culture. You have to be moving like one foot on the land, one foot in the water,
Yes,
right?
it's like a network.
Yeah, yeah, and you
Yeah.
have to move like that. And I think, I mean, if I were to trace it back further, my ancestral experience of my maternal side, they are from I think in Singapore, like the Kim Seng Road and all that, right?
Ah, ah.
Tan Kim Seng Road.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's my direct maternal descendant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. So Tan Kim Seng is like 7 generations ahead of me.
Okay.
Yeah. So in Malacca, when they started in Malacca,
Mm.
they built the bridge. There's a Tan Kim Seng bridge in Malacca. And then if you have been to Malacca, there's a clock tower,
Yes.
the red clock tower. It was built
Yeah,
during the
yeah.
Dutch period. So that was also built by was completed by his grandson,
I see.
Jack Kim. I mean, in Singapore, you have the Jack Kim Street lah.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Have.
his grandson completed the clock tower in Malacca. But it's actually started by his eldest son, which is Tan Beng Swee. But they are
Mm.
all much more prominent in Singapore. So what happens
Mm.
was that, yeah, they are from Malacca, and then they moved to Singapore when British founded Singapore, and then when British were encouraging all the merchants and all that to help them to develop Singapore.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Wow.
this
So
this
they.
early, yeah. So what I mean is that this early group of um, people, they know that the only way that they can thrive is by building bridges. You know,
Mm.
is
Mm.
by building bridges and working with the local community.
Mm.
Yeah. So when they build a bridge, let's say in Malacca town, they build a bridge. It serves the community, but also it serves their own purpose. It serves their business as well.
Right. Right.
you know yeah, so at that time so it's the way that humans have to see on a larger scale lah. But I think right now we tend to be a lot more individualistic. Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yes.
value system comes from it's I wouldn't always say that it's always from the West lah, but it has a certain need to, like that. It has that kind of
Yeah.
like what's
It
happening in the US. You can see what, like everybody is my
mm,
right. I want to open the shop, is my right. It's my right.
it breaks away from like the traditional ties to just family unity and that idea of or the idea of like kinship, like you said. I think it becomes more
mm,
of like this strive for independence, and then
mm,
that gets easily tangled, I feel,
mm.
with a lot of other things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, so that's I mean, just to paraphrase what I've been watching some of this video, they said the main problem
Yes.
is actually society is the main problem for
Yeah.
humanity. Society itself is the main problem because society forces you to identify yourself, from the largest, from the smallest, from the largest identification is actually the country, right? Yeah. And then from country you go down to state, and then state, then you
Mm,
become your ethnicity. Then your ethnicity,
mm,
then you use your religious leanings as a kind of identification. So all these things actually uh, put you separates you from you and the other, you and the other, you and the other, you and the other.
right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
eventually, this is actually what creates more problems, lah. Yeah,
Mm.
is
Wow.
this yeah. So finally, it's like then it goes down to like your family and your neighbor, what, right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
that is the micro level, and then even the within the family is like you and your sibling. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you want to
Yeah.
get your parents' affection. I mean that you're also jealous. Oh, my parents is gives more affection to my sibling than to me. So is this?
Yes.
So you see, from that you expand. It goes out to country lah, and country.
Mm-hmm.
That's why country goes to war and all that. So it's the,
But yeah, but
I
I
mean,
think, yeah. Mm.
so and I think that's what art making leads. I think art making for me it should lead you to realize a lot of things. I mean, especially in films, because films allow you to when you watch films, it's some films it allow you to experience, although vicariously, certain situations that you may not be able to experience in your own life experience.
Mm. Right. It
Uh,
challenges you.
yeah, and I think that is so essential, right?
Yeah.
Art making, or
Yeah.
even like when
For
you look
sure.
at a painting, or you look at a piece of sculpture.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that it you don't why people tend I mean it's so essential that it completes you as a human being, you know. And a
Mm.
lot of people do not realize that. Yeah, if you live your life or you live in a society that only emphasizes science and mathematics, then
Yeah. I don't think they even, I
you
don't,
can see
yeah.
what society will become like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
no
I think that
poems,
people
no
don't
literature.
understand. Yeah. They don't understand that
Yeah,
science and maths are actually like they have so much art in them as well. Like,
yeah,
you know, yeah. But
and
okay.
yes.
I guess like
Are
okay
we
to
digressing?
a little bit, but it's okay. No, it's very insightful like to hear about this because when you think about the pandemic, you think about quarantine, it's really just like removing yourself from society, right? And like being
Uh,
on your own now, there's no need to um when you don't have to communicate with someone with an other, your thoughts are also sharper and you are just it's also a different form of creation, like just being alone, I feel. um
mm.
so, okay,
Yeah,
I
actually,
guess,
being alone, being with
yeah,
yourself, being inside yourself,
yeah,
it's a very powerful time. It's
mm,
almost like you because normally you are so busy with so many things, like you have so many activities. So this period
yeah,
actually allows you to really go into yourself. Yeah, it's like
yeah,
forcing a silent retreat on the world, you know.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
almost lah. Because like some families, if they stay at home with the kids, and then they can go crazy, right? I mean, like
yeah,
so.
still very
But actually,
noisy.
yeah. But actually, yeah. If they can manage that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that
I
is,
agree.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I guess okay, just now you actually mentioned like there are a lot of these new online exhibitions and you were saying that you've been working
Yeah.
with Singapore a lot but through online. So I guess I want to ask about, so we
Yes.
see this huge shift towards like a digital space and like exhibitions, theater shows and
Mm,
plays, they're all being digitized. And I know you're like predominantly a media
mm,
artist, and a lot of your works
mm,
also take advantage of this virtual space. So what do you think on this
mm.
shift? And do you think this is a trend that will endure or potentially be an alternative to cross-cultural sharing without having to like really cross borders? You know?
I think this has opened up opportunities where you can have cross-cultural sharing without the
Mm,
need for the individual to be flown in, it's like, and in a way I think it's like now you can get somebody from Berlin, somebody from South America, and somebody from Asia to have a conference. Last
right.
time we do, I mean, it's also possible, but we don't use it as much. It's always nice to fly them in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then with all the carbon footprint and whatnot that comes with it. But now I think it opens up that kind of avenue where people are able to use this technology. So I think it will be a alternative to the physical spaces, because like you are talking about theater productions and all that, you cannot totally eliminate the need for a physical
Experience, right?
yeah, experience. That is really like you want to listen to a music performance, you need to
Mm,
be in a space, you need to be in that same space as the sound waves, the sound
yes.
waves has to be hit you, inside that like a auditorium, so that you cannot use the digital space to
Mm,
totally. Of course they try, I mean, right now you can have all this 3D sound and all that, but it's still different, like
yeah.
our human DNA is still very much has it's quite old, it's quite ancient, so we still need that kind of like the physical contact, yeah, because
Mm-mm.
it's so important, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think what it will create is that it will be a parallel space, like, like some people will use it for, and right now everything is on the mobile phone, right? Last time we don't
Mm,
have, yeah, last time
yeah.
we don't have, now everything you can use is from the mobile phone.
Exactly. We also see a lot of like social media being taken advantage of to become like exhibition spaces and things like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. What do you personally feel like you want to subscribe to this new online digital space as an exhibition space for your works at least?
uh, I personally, I would like to be in a physical space in front of the
Mm,
artwork. Yeah, because the online, there's only so much, you cannot describe the sensation and the feeling of really listening. Okay, for example, music, obviously you need to be in front of the musician and listen to the musician. Then for a painting is the same, like you have to be in front of the Guernica, like, or the
mm,
painting by Rothko and all that.
yes.
You need to be, or like the Radin Saleh, you need to be in front of that painting and then to take in the entire thing. It's
Mm,
part of the human sensorial connection that is not, that is missing if you were to use the digital platform.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So
Uh,
even with the virtual reality and all, somehow
mm,
is the human, yeah, it's just the there's something under your skin that can tell you that it's not quite there yet. Maybe in the
yes.
future, yeah. Right now, it's still
Yeah.
not quite there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. It's just
yeah,
interesting. I mean, okay, yeah, Gwen actually has a question. So she asked
uh,
maybe if you could share about the people whom you invited into your film, and
uh,
talk about how this is a diversity of people living in Singapore that are not usually in
yeah.
the radar of public's eye. So maybe you can
Uh,
share about it.
Actually, this idea with like right now, like the migrant issue was so. I mean, like it's
Yes. Very
because of this
relevant.
pandemic. But when I made the film, flooding in the time of drought,
Mm-hmm.
I looked at the migrants in Singapore. I mean, the film was
Mm.
actually essentially flooding in the time of drought is quite a long film. It's a two-part film. Um, they are like sisters, like a brother and sister. There's flood and drought. So drought is
Mm.
the part one and flood is part two. And then in each parts there's four stories and four stories. And then
Okay.
there's 10 languages, roughly
Yeah.
nine, yeah, 10 languages. And it covers Southeast Asian languages and East Asian languages. So you have
Mm.
Mandarin, Korean, and Japanese, and then you have the Southeast Asian languages, namely Indonesian, Filipino, and of course Chinese, and then Hokkien, and then you have
Wow.
Hindi, and then you have one Italian story. So this, but then the stories it's set in uh, a situation where Singapore runs out of water. You know,
Mm.
yeah, that was also part of why water. I use the water as a metaphor that cuts across many things, lah. So when Singapore runs out of water, how do the migrants deal with the situation? And of course,
Right.
there's also the economic situation. If you are rich, then everything you don't care. Like if you are rich, of course you are insulated. You use your money to make sure that the tanker will come to the house and all that. Yeah, and then if
Mm-hmm.
you, yeah, so that is the uh, and like and why I find it so fascinating. Why I find Singapore is so fascinating is that um, when I take the public transport, I will take the bus. You can hear all the tongues, the different tongues, like Thai, Myanmar, Indonesian, Tagalog, all being spoken around you. And and that is what makes it, and that is actually essentially the diversity. I mean, when you do trading in those, like in the ancient days, like this is where all the people will congregate, and that's where they do the trading. I mean, now it's still the same, but it's just that it's a different we don't I mean the as time progresses, but the essentially is still as ancient as like from the 17th
Yeah.
century or even older.
Yeah.
um so the element is still and then um there's this point that I wanted to talk about is also like this resentment towards
Mm.
immigrants, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a period last time, you see, and in one of my work, one of the Nusantara work, like there was a period, I think, um, in general, the like Singaporeans were resentful of like all the new immigrants from China. It's like, oh, these are the home wreckers. It's always this kind of imagery that is
Yeah.
created, right? Yeah, actually, the,
Mm-hmm.
the the clip that I send you is the Xiaoqing, that clip. Yeah, that clip
Yes.
actually touches on that situation. Um,
Okay.
but you see, if you know a bit longer, a bit older, the history,
Yeah.
the Peranakans were actually resentful of the later Chinese.
Mm.
Yeah. So
The
what I
new
mean by
Chinese.
that, yeah, no, the Chinese that are now the third generation Singaporeans or the fourth
Yes.
generation Singaporeans, the Peranakans look at them as these are the uncouth, these are the uncultured, these are the servant class, or these are
Mm.
the labor class. And and it's now then after that, this group were resentful of the newer Chinese immigrants. I mean, if you and I could see that because we come from, I mean, the Peranakas are much older, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
my,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like Tan Kim Seng on that day, from my family side, we already 9 generations.
Wow.
And then the later wave of Chinese, like where they are able to leave China as whole family units. That means the
Mm-hmm.
men and the women could leave, but during the early times where only the men could leave China, that's why the women couldn't leave China. That's why the men married the indigenous local women here
Yep.
in this
Yep.
part of the world, and that's how the Peranakan came about. And that would have taken centuries to develop, lah.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
Creole
yeah,
societies. Yeah.
yes. So this kind is a very cyclical thing. So
Mm.
when I see that this resentment of all the Singaporeans, and then I also kind of laugh. I said the Peranakans were doing that the same thing to you, what,
To
who are
you.
now
Yeah.
who are now the third generation Chinese or the
That's
fourth
true.
generation Chinese in Singapore. I think in Singapore mostly it's like third generation Chinese. It's the same
Mm-mm.
like in Malaysia also. What the Peranakans were looking at this because after the arrival of the British, there's different waves of people that come because on the encouragement of the British. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
yeah, and then they come in waves, and then also they are very much associated to their clan.
Yes.
Yeah, and then a lot of them, like the later I mean the later waves, have to find a trade to do, and one of the later trades, I mean,
Mm.
like they become domestic helpers for the British and the Peranakan families. Yeah. So I mean, like Peranakans are also very classist. They are very
Yeah.
yeah, they're very Anglophile, and the British are very classist as well. So they always think that, oh, these are the servant class, right? They won't allow their children to marry the servant class, right? But now
Yes.
it's different. Now it's mixed already, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that this kind of situation, it
It's
repeats
city.
itself. Then when it
Yeah.
manifests itself again, people don't realize, like Yeah.
That's really true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, these new immigrants that have come into Singapore, they're really just we were once them. Yeah,
Yes, you're
definitely.
once like them. And
Yeah.
then now, and then later on, when they marry and then they become like third generation, then they will start doing the same thing to the newer immigrants lah. And that's the unique thing about Singapore. Singapore
Yes.
is this kind of like it's a kind of yeah, it's a kind of what do you call it, the bingo wheel. It just keeps turning, you know.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
so people can just drop in and out anytime they want,
That's
and that's
true.
what is Singapore is.
Yeah, like the community identity is always in flux. There will never be a certain Singaporean, I think. Because
But that is the Singapore identity, if you ask me. That
mm,
is the Singapore identity. That's
yeah,
the nature of this kind of uh, commerce. I mean, commerce. Commerce.
yes.
The essence of Singapore is actually commerce, and commerce is very ruthless. You know,
Mm,
commerce is a do or die situation. Right?
yeah.
Yeah, there is no humanity in commerce, and how do you bridge that? I think you the
That
yeah,
is a
how do you bridge
question.
that? Yeah, how do you bridge that, and how do you make that sense of identity lah?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah,
And I think that's
yeah,
where art making comes into play, lah, very, very
yeah. Of course,
heavily
the
in
art making is just like, yeah. I mean, when I explore this in my art, I don't put it so obvious. They're always
yeah,
very,
yeah.
very subtle, very tangential. But then, if you
Yes.
can, if you can read into it. That's why the work becomes a kind of an enigma and mysterious.
It's
Because if the
yeah.
work is too obvious, then it becomes boring. You can only look. Like some paintings, you can revisit the painting over centuries and you will not get bored with it. And
Yep.
that's the mark of a very strong artwork. And I always
Mm,
strive to produce work that are like that. And these are the works that are you can never grasp the soul of the work actually, because you
mm,
can never touch the soul of the work.
mm.
It is just that you can just see it's a very like, but you cannot really grab the thing. You can see the maybe the heart, the inner sanctum, but you cannot touch
Yes.
the heart of the work. And I think that
Mm.
if works they are like that, is the works are quite powerful because there's a certain enigma and there's a certain mystery about the work.
Wow, yeah.
Mm. And you watch Tarkovsky's films, they're all like that.
Yes, it's very complex, and I think you're right.
Yes.
Like it takes many, many different lenses to really understand. I don't even think I can understand it
Yeah,
fully at
no,
this
each
point.
time I watch, it's like, oh, it's it's like a
Yeah.
different experience. And because it's so
Yes.
dense, yeah, it's a totally, and that's what makes it interesting.
Mm.
Yeah. And these are and why do people still think that art making is, no, I mean, art is essential. Art completes, art completes you as a human being. If
Yeah,
you
it,
don't
it
have,
is a very nice sentiment.
yeah, so that makes it,
Mm.
I mean, like, because I've been involved in the artistic realm for quite some time. Then you begin
Yes.
to realize in all disciplines of art, ultimately you reach the same pinnacle.
Mm.
That pinnacle, everybody is trying to go to that pinnacle. You can come from film, you can come from music, you can come from painting, you can come from sculpture, you can come from any like fashion design, you can come from dance.
Yeah.
You are all reaching that pinnacle is the same.
Okay. And do you
Yeah.
think that point, that pinnacle, when is the end? Like how will you know that you're there, I guess?
It's always
And do you
trying
think
to.
that point is like independent of any financial worries or any material worries?
I
It's
think I think you cannot be tied to the material side if you are really um how do you say, like the monk would never think about where he will get his food, right?
Yeah.
The food, there'll be somehow there'll be food for the monk.
Mm.
Yeah. But he has to be heart. I mean, his heart and soul has to be in that thing lah.
Yes.
Uh,
Mm.
and of course, it's not. You know, when the monk move into the monkhood, they the parents is the parents, but they are no longer considered like part of. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know exactly the philosophy, but they are detached already. You know,
Yeah.
they are detached from the parents already.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just that then
Okay.
these are the parents. Okay, they were with the parents, then they respect the parents, but they are no longer they are detached from the parents. So they have their own journey. So I think art
Right.
making is similar to that. Art making is actually, and if you want to talk about, you want to link art making with the commercial side, with the art world, of course,
Mm.
then you are dealing with the art market. And if you are dealing with the art market, then you are dealing about commerce, you are about the commercial world, and they are just as ruthless as anything else. They are just as ruthless as selling um, things in the pasar malam, you know, yeah, or
Yeah.
like selling things in Sim Lim Square.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
true.
everybody will. It's a cutthroat. It's a dog eat dog situation. But
Yeah.
then the essence of art making has to be separated from all this rubbish.
Yeah. That's actually that's a nice thing to end on, like the idea of just, art making for the sake of yourself. And also, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, well, thank you, Sherman. That's a very
welcome.
insightful. No, seriously, it's a very insightful discussion on, the role of art making. It gives you a lot to think about, like, especially
Yeah.
now the pandemic has caused us to really just reorder aspects of our life.